plain as day. Good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. Bad times create strong people. Strong people create great times. This is the cycle of history. 1,000 years of Roman history. There's a great book I recommend anyone read. I read it in 1997. It's not a beautiful read, but you need to understand it. It's called The Fourth Turning. Or you could read the book Generations, but it's about 700 pages, 800 pages. Bill Clinton gave me that book, and that's where I started. And it explains how our thinking, our process is so affected by the way we're raised generationally, the experiences we go through. So let me give you an example of why we're having challenges today and why I'm more than hopeful. Let's say you were born in 1910. Now, think of it this way first. Remember I talked about pattern recognition, pattern utilization, pattern creation. What gave humanity its greatest jump in its capacity was pattern recognition around seasons. Up until that time, we were hunter-gatherers, barely able to survive. It all depended on what was happening in the environment. We were dependent on the outside world. But once we understood the seasons, that planting in the springtime and then taking care of through the summer, boy, in the fall you can reap. And then there's going to be winter and you got to hang on to this stuff so you can survive. Once we recognized that pattern, humanity transformed. Communities were created, eventually cities and countries and states, right? So think of it this way. There's also a pattern of your history as a human. 0 to 21, 19 to 2021 is a springtime where everything's easy. It's easy to grow. Growth happens. You don't have to do squat. Your body grows, life grows. And some of us had a more protected childhood. Some of us had no protection. We had to step up and take care of things when we were 7 or 8 years old. But regardless, overall, it's a time in which people look out for you. You're taught things. You consume what you're taught. But once you come 19, 20, 21 roughly, and sometimes it's 16 for some people, 25 for others, but you get the picture, you enter a new season of life. You go to the summertime where you start testing and go, well, this is what I was taught, but do I really believe this shit? This is what people say, but now I'm in a relationship, And so all of this next 20 years is an explosive growth period if you work at it from 21 to 41. From 42 to 62 is a reaping time. If you planted really in the spring and you pushed hard through the summer, you're going to reap. Now, if you didn't plant in the springtime, you're going to weep in this season. You're going to be like, I don't have any money, I don't have any time, I don't know what to do, where am I going? But that's a season of power. That's when you really start to be able to lead companies, businesses, environments, and so forth. And again, some people get there earlier, some later, but overall, generationally, that's it. And then 63 to 83 is winter. And that winter time is a little different for somebody. Right now, that time is, maybe it's time, I'm an elder in the community, now it's time for me to mentor, to communicate. And if you're lucky, it goes 83 to, say, 103. Or the oldest living human is about 119, if you were lucky enough to do that. Maybe you get an extended period of time where you enter the next springtime. So there's seasons that you got to understand, because if you plant in the winter, I don't care how hard you work, you get no reward. If you bought a house, sounds wonderful, in 2007, normally great. 2007, probably not so great. You're probably just starting to do okay in the last 3 or 4 years, right? So there's a timing to things. There's a timing in your life. There's also timing in history. So imagine you're born in 1910. When would you come of age? 19 years old, 1929. What did you grow up with? World War I ended during that time. The whole world celebrated, and the roaring 20s began, and you're in your teens, cars, radios, parties. You can't wait to turn 19, 20, 21, right? And what happens? For that generation, right at that stage of life, the whole game, the wolves pull out from it, and people are jumping out of buildings. The economy goes to the floor. We got the Dust Bowl. But it didn't end there. Because what happened when they were 29? 1939, World War II. And you and I are too young to know it, but those around know that it looked like we were going to lose. Hitler was storming across Europe. It looked like life as we know it was over. And these people went overseas and became heroes. They faced such unbelievable, they were thought as flappers, they were thought as weak, they were a lot like a lot of the generation that you see today, the Z generation, not so much because they're just coming up, right? But the millennial generation, my older people, I see them as weak. They're snowflakes, they're this and they're that, but they have technology, they have insights. And when the outside world is demanding enough, not yet, because they're still fearful, they will grow. And that's when things change. And so the season occurs. So think about the difference between the 30s and the 40s versus the 50s versus the 60s as we came after 63 into an American summer as a different mindset versus the 80s to the 2010. So we're right now halfway through winter. We're in another winter. It starts financially. Now it's gone to health, but we're far from it. It's going to be war. And it might be cyber war. It might be full-on war, but there's zero question that China and the US are on a collision course that's going to shape the direction of humanity. And so the people that right now are alive today are going to have to grow in that environment. I really think we're at a season where there's going to be a whole new level of growth. And what I just want to do is be one of the many sources that can give people perspective, because here's the problem. A year ago, people thought we were coming out of, we got vaccines now and we're coming out of COVID and it's going to be all over now. And people are excited. But now, after going through 2 years of this, there's a lot of people now that no longer have a compelling future. Like, people talking about New Year's resolutions. Most people don't even have one because it's like they never followed through anyway, right? But at least they had something to look forward to. They're starting to get into learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is when something is so bad over and over again, you start thinking the problem's permanent. No problem is permanent. Or you start thinking the problem's pervasive because I haven't handled my finances, my whole world's over. Or because my relationship's bad, my whole world's over. Your life is bigger than that. Or all this is happening because there's something wrong with me. When you get to that point, you stop trying. And so my goal right now is to shake that up for people. People need a new perspective, and you can't do it by just sitting and thinking. You got to move your body. You got to change your energy and your focus, because low level of energy, I don't give a damn how smart you are, you're not going to use all your ability. But if I get you into a higher state of being, mentally, emotionally, physically, then all of a sudden you start remembering who you are and you start coming up with answers that you never even thought were possible before.
The idea of remembering